another production of the Chicago SAG-AFTRA Senior Radio Play. It was back in 1997. We were at a meeting over at where our union is. We have lunch and we talk about the business and we talk about all the jobs we didn't get. And so one day we're thinking, well, we ought to do something, substantive and really work on improving our acting skills. Like Louis Armstrong used to say, got to work on your chops, man. You got to work on your chops. So we've been working on our chops, and it's been 20 years now that we've enjoyed Now, this is our 87th show.
Yeah.
That's all 87. But I know a couple of people who have been to most of them. That's our wonderful sound effects crew, Larry Youngberg. When we do a Western, they're the ones who get those horses galloping into town. What are you pointing at, Mercedes? Yeah, I said Conai. Yeah. Okay. And the two guys up in the booth, that's Tim Jones and Eric Visgeyer. Now, how did we get started? We were at this meeting, and I told about how at my house we had radio scripts, and we would invite about 20 or 25 of our friends in for a buffet supper, and we'd pass these scripts out, and everybody got a chance to play a character, and it was so much fun, and I know this has been so much fun for us over the years to bring these to you here. Now, August 10th, we have two more shows. One Arch Oboe play, Rocket from Manhattan, and an episode from the show Escape, Wild Jack Rat. So mark that down on your calendar. Now I'm going to turn it over to the director of our first show, Ma Perkins. Here is one of our leading ladies, Mercedes de Monk.
Hi, it's great to be with you. And, my mom took me to a radio show, which I probably told you about before, but everyone was dressed up in beautiful gowns and tuxes. But normally, that is not the way radio worked in Chicago. People were running around from studio to studio and barely making it sometimes in order to play a role. But there were a handful of people that were booked all the time. And it was a really busy city, and I wish I missed it by just a few years. It would have been great to be there at that time. And most of the time they were dressed in very business-like suits or dresses, no slacks, of course, and the ladies wore hats sometimes and white gloves almost always. Well, times have changed, and we don't have any dress casual on our stage tonight. But I will tell you one funny little story about Ma Perkins, which is our first show. Ma Perkins began in about 1932, and believe it or not, it went to 1960. And Ma Perkins had fans all over the world, in Europe. It was amazing. I didn't know that until recently. But when they auditioned the ladies for Ma Perkins, they had a screen in front of the women so that the producer and the advertiser really didn't know what Ma was going to look like. Well, Ma was supposed to be 55 years old and very wise and, up there in years, but very wise and sweet. And the woman who got the role was 23 years old. Her name was Virginia Payne, and she played it her whole career.
No kidding.
Not a bad gig, I guess.
No, not a bad gig at all.
Anyway, this is a typical episode, and in this episode, Ma, who is the wise person in our little town of, I can't remember the name of it. Rushville Center. Thank you, darling. Rushville Center. Well, Ma owns the lumber yard there, and she's got words of wisdom for everybody. And this particular episode, she's trying to mend a marriage that is falling apart. So let's see what happens.
And now, Oxidol's own Ma Perkins. Here at the high school in Rushville Center, they teach domestic science. Well, at the end of the term, the girls taking the course held a sort of open house to show their parents and relatives how much they'd learned. Mrs. Campbell was telling me about it.
Hi, Charlie. Oh, why, Charlie, when my daughter Jane gets married, she'll know more about cooking and housekeeping than I ever did. Were you at the open house, Charlie?
Sure was. And I tasted Jean's angel food cake, and it was delicious.
Yum, yum.
And tell Jean that I said the tables certainly looked pretty, too.
Oh, didn't they, though? Jean and Betty Howard brought the tablecloths from home.
Uh-huh.
But you know, Charlie, seeing one of my tablecloths besides Mrs. Howard's sort of upset me.
Well, how's that?
Well, her tablecloth was so much whiter than mine. Why, hers was so white that I asked her if she bleached it.
What'd she say?
Oh, she said no, indeed, that she just washed it in Oxidol, and it came that white without bleaching. Oh, these gloves.
Well, Mrs. Campbell, I'll bet it's going to be Oxidol for her very next wash day. So by now, I guess she knows that Oxidol can wash clothes white without bleaching. And Oxidol's Hustle Bubble suds are safe for wash colors and rayons, too. So when you go shopping, get that famous orange and blue bullseye package of Oxidol. On wash day, you'll enjoy a wash that's white without bleaching. News travels quickly in a small town, and Mrs. Campbell, like many other women, were inquisitive about Ma's sudden trip to Kansas City. Well, Ma returned with the object of her trip, Matilda Pendleton, tonight. But Augustus Pendleton had followed them, and there was a terrible scene in Ma's living room. It's a few minutes now. Ma just came back downstairs and is on her way to the kitchen.
Faye, Willie.
Yeah, Ma?
Come on out here, Willie. And you, Faye.
What happened, Ma? Boy, did he sound mad. We couldn't hear it all back there in the kitchen.
Where did Mrs. Pendleton, Mr. Pendleton go, Ma?
Now, one question at a time. Mr. Pendleton's left. He went on home, Faye.
Is Matilda still here?
She's upstairs with Evie, Willie. Now look, Faye, I want to talk to Evie. You run upstairs and stay with Matilda. Tell Evie to come on down.
Right away, Ma. I'll go right on up.
Well, what happened, Ma? Tell me.
Willie, a lot happened. But it's not so much what's already happened, it's what might happen. Tell me quick, how has Gary Curtis been behaving while I've been away?
Ma, to tell you the truth, he's been kind of sullen.
Sullen?
Yeah, I don't know what happened, Ma. Something between Gary and Faye and Gladys Pendleton. Faye says Gladys slapped Gary.
Gladys slapped Gary?
Faye's been kind of funny, Ma. She hasn't been saying anything. She and Evie have talked some, but not too much. Me, I've been staying out of it. I don't know, Ma. I don't know what it's all about.
Well, here comes Evie now. Come on in, Evie. Better close the door.
Ma, do you want me to just...
No, Willie. You can stay. But Willie, don't you start saying what you think.
I'm not saying what I think, Evie. Do I ever butt into things that don't concern me? Oh, well, okay.
How's everything upstairs, Evie?
Well, Matilda's quieted down some, Ma. I think she'll probably go to bed after a little. But tell me, Ma, what on earth happened?
That's what I want to talk to you about.
Well, all I know is Matilda heard Mr. Pendleton down here, and I tried to stop her, but she insisted on listening in the hall.
Well, Evie, Mr. Pendleton first assumed Matilda was here, but I didn't tell him she was or wasn't. Then he assumed she wasn't, and he got all sorrowful about it. Said he'd do anything if she'd come back. He'd get down on his knees, and he'd tell her the past was all forgotten. That was what I hoped for. I guess Matilda, too, because that was evidently what she heard when she started down. I thought it was going to be a joyful reunion, but the minute I told him she was here, well, he started ranting and raving, and that was when she walked in.
Ma, what was that he said about...
Now, Willie!
Oh, pardon me. Pardon me, Evie. Pardon me all to pieces.
Well, anyhow, Matilda really went after him. Said she wasn't going to be a slave for him any longer. Said she didn't have to explain anything to him, and she wasn't going to.
She said that?
Said more than that.
I can hardly believe it. Why, Ma, Matilda's been scared to death of Mr. Pendleton. She's been afraid to tell him what happened in the past. Why, Ma, that's what caused the whole thing.
Evie, don't forget, Matilda saw Jeffrey Powell in Kansas City, and Mr. Powell's still in love with her.
Oh, but even so, Ma. Oh, wait a minute.
Don't you see, Evie? Well, I'll tell you what I told Mr. Pendleton after I got Matilda out of the room. I told him he was driving his wife into another man's arms.
Wow, you mean this guy Powers? Powell, Ma?
Willie, will you please let Ma and me discuss this thing?
That's exactly who I meant, Willie.
What's his name, Ma? Now, Evie, don't look at me like that. I just asked a question. That's all.
Well, Ma, do you think Matilda is...
Matilda's a woman who loves luxury, Evie. Augustus Pendleton's been able to supply her with a good bank account. On the train back, Matilda told me that herself. Well, her words were, Jeff's got money too.
You mean, Ma, she's thinking
No conjecture, Evie.
Ma, then Matilda is right on the verge of divorce.
Matilda says marriage can become a habit, but I still believe there's love there. There must have been in the beginning. There must be some of it left. It's sort of like a coat or something you gradually quit wearing. The first thing you know, you think it's gone. But if you look around the house hard enough, you can find it.
Can I say something, Ma?
Go ahead, Willie. What?
I just wanted to say, you're right. You're right, Ma. That's right. Well, that's all.
I think I gave Mr. Pendleton a pretty good awakening. I don't say Matilda shouldn't have explained what happened between her and Jeffrey Powell a long time ago. And I believe Matilda would have explained, only Mr. Pendleton's had her half scared to death.
What if she intends going back to Kansas City, Ma? To this, what's his name guy?
Never mind what's his name, Willie. Can't you even...
Okay, Evie. Okay.
I don't think Matilda's got that far in her own thinking. Now, you and Matilda have been good friends for a long time, Evie. I want you to stay with her tonight and do all the talking you can. Try to get her to go back home tomorrow morning.
Well, naturally, I'll do what I can, Ma.
I saw that man in Kansas City, Evie. He's awfully attractive. Matilda could be mighty swayed, but if Matilda leaves Mr. Pendleton, she's going to regret it. Oh, Evie, wait a minute. What's this about Gladys slapping Gary?
Oh, well, Ma, Faye says Gladys came over one morning and Gary immediately accused her of telling you his father was in Kansas City.
Oh, yes. Gladys did tell me.
Well, as I get it, Gary resents the fact that you and Matilda went there, and he assumes you went to see his father.
Matilda in love with Gary's old man.
Who's that coming down the stairs?
Ma, that sounds like...
That's Gary now. That's his footsteps, bet you a nickel.
Well, hello, Gary.
Oh, I heard your voice, Ma. I thought you might be with someone else.
No, just Evie and Willie.
Well, I didn't mean to interrupt the family tete-a-tete, but Ma,
Yes, Gary.
I want to talk to you in the morning.
Very well, Gary. We'll talk. In the morning.
Well, that's all.
Say, what do you think he meant by that, Ma?
Well, tomorrow at this time, we'll hear Gary Curtis say,
Ma, I've tried awfully hard to like you. I've tried to go along with you, and I've tried to believe in you. Now I'm going to tell you I can't believe in you. I won't go along with you, and I think I'm beginning to hate you.
by all means, be sure to listen to Ma Perkins again tomorrow. Until tomorrow, then, this is Charlie Warren saying so long, and remember, Oxidol. Don't waste soap. Always measure your Oxidol instead of pouring it from the package. Then you won't use more than you really need. Heard in tonight's cast, and please hold your applause until we've announced every name. Dolores Chapman was Mrs. Campbell. John Green was Willie. Marshall Bean was Gary Curtis. Susie Bratt as Faye. Connie Foster as Evie. Jean Moran as Ma Perkins. And I'm Don Ferris. And our producer was Parker Gronwald, and our director was, again, our favorite leading lady, Rosita DeMonk.
Was beloved by real teachers all across this country because she was the first character not portrayed as a mousy schoolmarm. Our Miss Brooks ran on the radio from 1948 to 1957. During that run, it went to television, and for a while it ran concurrently in both media with the same basic cast doing both shows. There was even a spin-off feature film of Our Miss Brooks in 1956 with most of that cast. The series made Eve Arden a star and springboarded the careers of Gail Gordon, who played Principal Conklin, and Richard Crenna, who played student Walter Denton. Just two final notes. We are fortunate to have in our cast tonight Rob Alton, who was fortunate enough to play opposite Miss Arden on stage during the beginning of his career. That's not why I cast him, but it's a bonus. And finally, some scripts mention this either in narration or in dialogue, but this is one of those scripts that does not. So I should tell you that the character of Mrs. Davis is not a domestic. She's Miss Brooks' landlady and good friend who broaches her apartment apparently whenever she feels like it. And with that, I present our Miss Brooks episode, Friday the 13th.
Palmolive Soap, your beauty hope, brings you our Miss Brooks. For many people, Friday the 13th brings the feeling of impending misfortune. But our Miss Brooks, who teaches English at Madison High School, doesn't believe in such superstitions.
No, indeed. I don't need any special day to be unlucky. In fact, ladders shy away when I come near them, and every mirror in the house has 7 years bad luck because I'm always broke. Last Friday was no exception. Have you ever opened your eyes in the morning and felt that everything was going to go wrong that day, and then realized you'd already made your first mistake by opening your eyes? Well, that's how I felt on Friday when Mrs. Davis entered my room.
Up, 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 Connie. Up, up, up. Rise and shine.
I'm up, Mrs. Davis.
Up you go. Out of the sack and hit the deck.
I'm hitting.
Why, Connie, I'm surprised at you. You're not nervous about it being Friday the 13th, are you?
Oh, certainly not, Mrs. Davis.
Now, cheer up, Connie. You'll feel better when you've got a nice breakfast under your belt.
Breakfast? Yes, that should help.
Then you'll go to school, and you'll see your pupils and your friends on the faculty.
Yes, that'll be nice.
And your principal, Mr. Conklin.
There goes breakfast. Mrs. Davis, I think you have just psychoanalyzed me. The reason I never want to get up in the morning is that I'm afraid to face Mr. Conklin.
Well, you may not believe this, Connie, but it's probably just as afraid to face you. It's like my brother Victor's experience. You remember me talking about Victor, don't you? He's the absent-minded one?
Yes, I remember him, Mrs. Davis.
Of course, he's not as absent-minded as my sister Angela. Oh, she's really a case.
Yes, I know. But about your brother.
My brother?
Victor.
Victor? What about Victor?
You started to tell me about his experience.
Oh, yes. He's had a lot of experience. Well, I'll fix some breakfast now.
Please, Mrs. Davis, drop the other shoe. You know, your brother Victor had an experience that had something to do with my being afraid to face Mr. Conklin.
Oh, that's right. Well, Victor was terribly afraid a certain dog in his neighborhood would bite him if he ever got too close to him. But the psychiatrist who took care of Victor explained that the dog was probably afraid that Victor was going to kick him. And a couple of months with the psychiatrist, my brother went right into that dog's yard, and they stayed there together for over an hour.
Really? What did they do?
They just stood around biting and kicking each other. Fortunately, a policeman came by and stopped it.
Yes, that was fortunate. Your brother probably couldn't have taken much more of that kicking. But Mrs. Davis, I'm afraid my trouble with Mr. Conklin isn't merely psychological. Whenever we get together, little accidents keep occurring.
Accidents?
Yes. Ink spills on his shoes. Flower pots fall on him. And yesterday, while he was bawling me out for transferring a tiny little flower pot from my windowsill to his head, he broke his glasses.
Well, maybe you just better stay out of his way for a while, dear. Now, before you do anything else, you've got to get a snapshot ready.
A snapshot?
Yes. Walter Denton called and said they're getting the yearbook ready, and he needs snaps of the faculty.
Ah.
Now, I brought in your album. and we'll pick out a nice picture together.
Fine.
Now, let's see. Where's a nice one of you, Connie?
You want to sit with me on the edge of the bed?
Oh, now, this here. Where is a nice one of you, Connie? Oh, Connie, how did you get down there on the floor?
I just came down with the mattress. Mrs. Davis, this is the second time the bed has collapsed, and you've got to do something about it.
Oh, I will, Connie. I'll see that you get lighter pillow slips. Now, you better get up and get dressed, and we can look over the album at breakfast.
All right, Mrs. Davis.
Watch those springs, Connie. They still have plenty of life in them. Connie? Connie, where are you now?
You were right about those springs, Mrs. Davis. I'm in the shower.
Now we'll just push the breakfast dishes to one side there and look through your album for a nice picture for the yearbook.
I haven't gone through this album in a long time.
Oh, look at this one of you, Connie. It looks terribly cute. Stretched out on that rug. What is it, bearskin?
We certainly are. Oh, I don't think that would be the ideal picture for the yearbook, Mrs. Davis. Too dressy.
Oh, here's one, taken at the beach. My, what a stunning bathing suit.
That's my French model bathing suit. It was taken at Lakeview Beach last summer.
And those sandals are exquisite. Such a pretty design. That's all handwork in the front, isn't it?
Sort of. Those are Blue Jay corn plasters. I'd better get ready. Walter Denton and Stretch Snodgrass should be picking me up any minute.
Oh, they're such nice boys. But you know, Connie, I can't help but feel sorry for Stretch. He's a wonderful athlete, but honestly, for a 16-year-old boy, he has the mind of an 8-year-old simpleton.
Oh, that isn't fair, Mrs. Davis. Stretch has every bit as much mentality as a 16-year-old simpleton.
Well, somewhere along the line, that boy's mental development has been arrested.
Arrested? It's been sentenced and shot. Now, if you'll put away that album.
Oh, just a minute, Connie. Has that Mr. Boynton ever seen you in it?
In the album?
No, in the French bathing suit that you're wearing in this snapshot.
Why, no, I don't believe the bashful biologist has seen me in that.
Well, he should. That would take his eyes off his frogs for a minute. Now, let's take this picture out of the album so you can give it to the boys when they get here.
Oh, you're joking, Mrs. Davis. If Mr. Conklin saw a picture like that in the yearbook, steam would shoot through the top of his head.
I don't mean the whole picture, Connie. I've got the scissors to cut off your head. That's all they'll need for the book. There we are. Here's your head, Connie.
Just in time, Mrs. Davis. Now I can finish my coffee. That was very nice. Oh, would you mind answering that, Mrs. Davis? I'll go get my hat and bag and put the finishing touches on my face.
Very well, Connie.
Hi there, Mrs. Davis.
Hi, Mrs. Davis.
Hello, Stretch. Walter, come in. Miss Brooks will be with you in a minute. She's just putting her face on.
Oh, we're in no hurry. Say, what's that picture you got in your hand?
Oh, this? Oh, this is Miss Brooks.
Let's see. Gosh, now I know what you meant when you said she's putting on her face.
But where's her head, Mrs. Davis?
Her head? Oh, she's probably got that in her purse.
Oh, her purse? How can she get along with no head?
Coming from you, Stretch, a question like that could be very embarrassing. Apparently, this picture's been torn, Mrs. Davis.
Naturally. You said you just needed a snapshot of Mrs. Brooks's head for the yearbook, Walter. So we snipped that off for you.
Oh, I get it. But Mrs. Davis, could we have the lower part of the snapshot too?
Well, I don't see why not, Walter. When you get through with the yearbook, you can paste both parts together again.
Gosh, if I may say so, Miss Brooks' figure sure looks good, beautiful in a bathing suit.
Especially in that one, Walter. That's a French bathing suit.
Yeah. How do you like it, Stretch?
Oh, I don't know. I don't understand French so good.
Well, neither do I. But in this case, all you gotta do is read between the lines.
Yeah. Yeah! Hey, want me to carry the snapshot for you, Walter?
Oh, no thanks, Stretch. It's not heavy.
Well, I see I have two chauffeurs today. Hello, boys.
Hi, Miss Brooks.
Oh, Stretch picked me up today on account of I had a little trouble with my clutch.
What kind of trouble, Walter?
I lost it.
You lost your clutch?
Oh, yes, ma'am. But I'll find it all right. It can't be much more than a block away from where the emergency brake fell off.
That's probably just a stone's throw from the motor. Oh, before I forget, here's a snapshot for the yearbook.
A snapshot of who? Oh, this is your face. Aha. Thanks, Miss Brooks.
Well, we better be going if we're going.
Oh, yes, it's getting late. Now, remember what I told you, Connie. Be sure to invite Mr. Boynton to take you swimming soon, so he can see you in a bathing suit.
Please, Mrs. Davis, if Mr. Boynton wants to take me swimming, he'll take me swimming. I'm certainly not going to do anything about suggesting it to him until lunchtime.
Well, we better step on it. We gotta pick up the Conklins on the way to school.
Mr. Conklin?
Yeah. Harriet called me and she told me that her mother had to take their car downtown early this morning and she was counting on me to pick them up.
Well, but if I had known that, I would have gone to school on my pogo stick.
So would I have, but we can't let Walter down now, Miss Brooks. Besides, Mr. Conklin isn't so bad. For all we know, he's just as nervous about us as we are about him.
Stretch, you're not related to Mrs. Davis's brother, Victor, are you?
Our Miss Brooks will continue in just a moment. But first,
millions of women will prefer Beauty Lather Palmolive over all other leading toilet soaps the minute they try it. For Palmolive Soap's famous Beauty Lather now has a new, clean, flower-fresh fragrance for new allure, new charm. For a new loveliness all over, use big bath-size Palmolive in tub or shower.
as our Miss Brooks and the boys are on their way to pick up Mr. Conklin, let's look in on Madison High School's beloved principal as he and his daughter Harriet are finishing breakfast.
Well, Daddy, how'd you like your breakfast?
It was very adequate, Harriet. This suit is new. It's the latest thing. Black shark skin. Do you like it?
Oh, it's real chic, Daddy.
Of course, this tie may be a trifle loud with it. It's midnight blue. Do you think it's too loud, Harriet?
I can't hear a thing, Daddy. I mean, it looks fine.
This is the outfit I had my picture taken in. The one that's pinned on the bulletin board. Inasmuch as you are the yearbook editor, I wanted you to have a good photo.
Thanks, Daddy. Walter will appreciate it, too.
Denton, what's he got to do with this?
Well, he's associate editor of the yearbook, and he's giving us a lift today.
Well, he doesn't give me a lift. In fact, if I may borrow an expression from the undergraduate body, he brings me down. What you see in that booby is beyond me.
He isn't a booby. Walter's the manager of the baseball team and editor of the Madison Monitor, and, oh, well, he's just an all-around...
He's just an all-around...
Daddy! I think it's very nice of Walter and Stretch to pick us up. After all, they had to get up earlier in the morning to stop for us after picking up Miss Brooks.
Miss Brooks? Will she be along?
Of course. Walter always takes her to school. What have you got against Miss Brooks?
Nothing at all, Harriet. At least nothing that some new shoes, new glasses, and a head free of a flower pot won't straighten out. I don't know what it is about that woman, but when she's in the vicinity, disaster rings in my bones. Today is Friday the 13th.
Oh, please, Daddy, you're exaggerating. Miss Brooks is probably just as nervous about facing you as you are about facing her.
I doubt it. I wish we could get to school some other way. If only I wasn't so late. Oh, well, they've lifted the Berlin blockade. Maybe there's still hope for me.
Well, here's Mr. Conklin's house.
Is he still sore at you, Walter?
Yeah, but I just can't seem to put my finger on the reason. But lately, Mr. Conklin looks upon me with,
Would repugnance do it?
Is that bad?
Very bad.
Then that would do it. That's why I wrote this speech when I knew we were taking him to school.
Speech?
Yeah, so by the time we get to Madison, my future father-in-law and I'll be buddies. Oh, before I honk the horn, I'd like you to hear the speech, Miss Brooks. It goes, Mr. Conklin, sir.
Excuse me, Walter, but Mr. Conklin, sir, and his daughter Harriet just came out on the porch.
They must have seen us pull up.
She's leading him down the steps. Something must have happened to his glasses. Oh, yes.
Hello, Miss Brooks. Hi, boys.
Hi, Mr. Conklin. Hi, Harriet.
Hello, Mr. Conklin.
How are you this morning, Mr. Conklin?
Fairly well so far. Hey, get in, Harriet.
Yes, Daddy. I'll sit in front with the boys.
And you sit back here with me, Mr. Conklin. Here, I'll hold the door for you.
Thank you.
That's a lovely suit you have on. Is it new?
Yes, Miss Brooks. Brand new.
It's just your pocket, Mr. Conklin. I'll sew it up when we get to school. Go ahead, Stretch.
Mr. Conklin, sir.
Shut up, you boob.
Well, I fixed Mr. Conklin's suit and unruffled his feathers when we got to school. And by lunchtime, I was beginning to lose some of my feeling of foreboding, especially since Mr. Boynton had invited me to the cafeteria for lunch. Remembering Mrs. Davis's advice, I thought I'd try and get Mr. Boynton to ask me out swimming so I could show off my French bathing suit. I was extremely subtle about it. Did you enjoy your lunch, Mr. Boynton?
Oh, very much, Miss Brooks.
Me too. Let's go for a swim.
A swim? Isn't it a little early for that sort of thing?
Well, we can wait till after school. It'll be later then.
I mean, early in the year, it's still quite brisk out.
Oh, once you get in the water, it's warm, especially at Lakeview Beach. It's only an hour drive from here.
No, I'm afraid I don't care much for beaches, Miss Brooks. They're bad for my sinus trouble.
Oh.
But I like swimming in a pool, though.
Wonderful, Mr. Boynton. Let's go for a swim in your pool.
I'm afraid that's impossible, Miss Brooks. My pool's at the YMCA.
Oh. I guess it would alter the routine a bit if I were to walk in there. Oh, I know what we might do. Work on your lawn for a while.
I don't have any lawn, Miss Brooks. I live in a bachelor apartment. All I've got's a window box.
Perfect. That's just what we'll do.
What's just what we'll do?
We'll put on bathing suits and water your window box.
Why do we have to put on bathing suits to water a window box?
All right. You wear what you want, and I'll wear what I want.
I'm afraid I won't be free this afternoon, Miss Brooks. You see, I've been searching high and low for another frog like my pet McDougal. He's a leptodactylus, pentadactylus, you know.
That's obvious.
I can't seem to find one anywhere. None of the laboratory supply houses handle them, and, well, I've got to get one for an experiment.
If I bump into one, I'll give you a buzz. Now, if you'll excuse me, Mr. Boynton, I'm going over to the dessert counter. It's getting pretty crowded in here.
Well, is there something I can get for you, Miss Brooks?
No, I rather enjoy the exercise. I can still get a good post position right on the rail. See you in a few minutes.
No!
Oh, I'm terribly sorry, sir. It was all my fault.
Yes, it was, Miss Brooks.
Mr. Conklin, I didn't recognize you. You've got new glasses on.
I wish you had them on.
Sit down, Mr. Conklin. I'll replace everything you had on your tray. Now, what can I get you?
Well, suppose we start off with some nice split pea soup.
Split pea soup, yes, sir. About how much?
About as much as I now have in my vest pocket. And Miss Brooks, after you've served me, and before you go back to your classroom, stop at the bulletin board, will you?
The bulletin board?
Yes, there's a picture of me on it, and I'd like you to see just how this suit looked before I met you.
There, that'll teach him to call me a boob.
It sure looks funny, Walter. Miss Brooks in a bathing suit with Mr. Conklin's head nailed on her shoulders.
get her in trouble? These could be anybody's legs.
Anybody but Mr. Conklin's, that is.
Let's get out of here, Stretch. Somebody's coming.
Okay, but I'd sure like to see Mr. Conklin's face when he spots his picture.
Well, here's the bulletin board, Mr. Boynton. Mr. Boynton, do you see what I see?
Yes, I think so, Miss Brooks. Is this the suit Mr. Conklin wanted you to see him in?
That happens to be me, Mr. Boynton. It was taken at Lakeview Beach.
You? Well, that must be a pretty old snapshot. Frankly, I like you better without the mustache.
Thank you. I'm a lot less bald now, too. Those darn kids must have put my picture over Mr. Conklin's for a rib. But if he finds out this is my picture, he'll take my head off permanently.
Maybe we will drive to Lakeview Beach this afternoon. But first, I better get this picture down, Miss Brooks. Oh, they didn't use thumbtacks. These are real nails, and they're hammered way in.
Oh, I'd better find a hammer to pick them out with. Come on, Mr. Boynton. The keys to the supply room are in Mr. Conklin's office.
Now, here's his door, Miss Brooks. I'd better knock.
Oh, don't bother. Mr. Conklin must still be at lunch. You wait here, Mr. Boynton. I'll go in and get the key.
How do you do?
I was just coming in, Mr. Conklin.
I was just going out, Miss Brooks.
I thought you were still at the cafeteria.
I wish I were. Just for a moment, please gaze upon me.
Yes, sir.
It will be evident even to you that by banging the door in my face, you have broken my glasses. The regrettable fact remains, however, that even without my glasses, I can still see you.
I just wanted to get a hammer, Mr. Conklin.
A hammer? You've done a splendid job without a hammer. Miss Brooks, call me a foolish dreamer if you will, but somehow I had hoped that today's pocket-ripping and soup-spilling incidents would appease your voracious appetite for mania. But no. For the second time in a few days, you have shattered my glasses.
Please, Mr. Conklin, I can't stand this war of nerves. If you hold me responsible for those accidents, why are you so restrained? You've got high blood pressure. Use it. I mean, give me a good loud dressing down and get it out of your system.
Miss Brooks, such crude behavior would be unbecoming to the principal of a high school. To lose control in the presence of others is to betray ill breeding. Now then, would you be good enough to excuse me for a moment while I walk over to the closet?
Of course, Mr. Conklin.
Thank you, my dear. I feel much better now. And here I found a hammer in the closet. You may have it, Miss Brooks.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Conklin. I'll just take this and... I'm sorry I dropped the hammer on your foot, Mr. Conklin.
That's all right. I have another foot.
Oh, Miss Brooks, could I see you for a minute?
Why, Stretch? School's been out for 10 seconds. Why are you loitering in the hall?
Well, I've been looking for you, Miss Brooks. I even asked Mr. Conklin if he knew where you were, but funny thing, the minute I mentioned your name, you ran into the closet.
Yes, I know.
Why did he do that, Miss Brooks?
Quiet, Stretch. That's why. Now, what did you want to see me about, Stretch?
Well, Harriet Conklin wanted a full-figure picture of you for the yearbook, so I pasted your head to the lower part of the picture we took off the bulletin board.
I've never had a full-figure picture in the yearbook. I guess Friday the 13th isn't so unlucky after all. Unless you happen to be Mr. Conklin.
Oh, there you are, Miss Brooks. Isn't it terrible?
Isn't what terrible, Walter?
Harriet Conklin just got the proofs back for the yearbook, but look at the snapshot section. Look here where it says, "This is our Miss Brooks."
Oh, let's see. Oh, no. Hey, Stretch, you pasted the wrong parts together. This is a picture of my face attached to a blubbery body wearing a black sharkskin suit.
Gee, maybe there is something to Friday the 13th.
Oh, it's an awful break, Miss Brooks. Every teacher and student at Madison will see this. You'll be the laughing stock of the whole school.
Gosh, I wouldn't blame you if you bursted out crying.
Not me, boys. To lose control in the presence of others is to betray ill breeding. Will you excuse me a minute?
And now, Miss Brooks.
I just want to borrow your closet, Mr. Conklin. Well, it looked as if the day might end a little better than it began when Mr. Boynton took my arm as we were leaving school and said,
Let's hurry, Miss Brooks. I'd like to get to Lakeview Beach while the sun's still out.
"Oh, fine, Mr. Boynton, but let's stop at the house and pick up my French bathing suit."
Oh, you won't need a bathing suit, Miss Brooks.
Then why are we going to Lakeview Beach?
Because of that picture of you on the bulletin board. We've got to stop at the same spot where that picture was taken.
But why?
Well, I noticed in the snapshot there was a leptodactylus, pentadactylus frog right near your left foot.
If you don't mind, Mr. Boynton, I'd still like to pick up my bathing suit.
For what?
If it fits the frog, you two can go steady.
Be with us next week at the same time for another comedy episode of Our Miss Brooks. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System. Please hold your applause until everyone has been announced. Heard in tonight's cast were Maya Herschel as your commercial announcement and as Harriet, Alma Washington as Mrs. Davis, John Yoder as Walter, Rob Alton as Stretch, Robert Marr as Principal Conklin, Martin Hallisey as Mr. Boynton, Madeline Fallon as Miss Brooks, and I'm your announcer, Roger Badish. Our producer was Madeline Fallon, and our director was Herb Lichtenstein. Now stay tuned for Goodman Ace and Jane Ace in the Easy Aces.
It's time again for Easy Aces, starring Jane and Goodman Ace. Easy Aces is brought to you each Monday, Friday, and Saturday evening by the makers of Anacin. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Easy Aces. I learned years ago not to tell mother-in-law jokes. In fact, the first year we were married, I made an agreement with Jane. Every time I told a joke about her mother, I'd have to pay her $1. And besides, what happened to me with Jane's mother this week was no joke. Started the other evening after dinner. I was reading the paper, and Jane was writing a letter.
Oh my goodness, this doesn't look right. Dear, how do you spell right?
Right?
Yes, I'm answering my mother's letter and I'm having one of my bad spells.
Yes. Which right did you mean? There's R-I-G-H-T and W-R-I-T-E. How are you using it? What's the word ahead of it?
Oh, the word ahead of it is last.
Oh, last right. That's R-I-T-E. What happened? Why, who was it? How old was he?
No, dear. All I'm saying is, dear mother, I'm glad I found time to at last write you.
Oh, last right, yes.
I'm answering this letter she sent me
choice.
Okay, I will. Oh, first, let me tell you a very funny story I heard today, dear. There was a fellow that found a certain doctor charges $10 for the first visit and $5 for the second visit. So when he went in to see him for the first time, he said, "Hello, doctor, here I am again."
You heard that today?
Yes.
For the first time?
Yes, the first time it was $10, and the second time...
Explain it, Jane. I got it.
Well, you're not laughing.
Oh, excuse me, Jane.
Well, now that we're all in a good mood, I'll read the letter. I'll get all the pages in order. 10, 11, 12. Here we are.
12 pages? They wrote the Declaration of Independence on one page.
Well, they had all those quill pens then.
Look, John Hancock, why don't you just condense what she says? How is your mother?
Oh, fair to meddling. She says, "Dear," she writes so badly. Yes. "Dear Jane, how are you? How is your husband? I hope you are both well and happy. I am as happy as can be expected since I've been living with your sister and her husband. Of course, I need a new upper plate and I need a pair of new arch supports, and I could use a new hearing aid. The only thing I don't need is a pair of new glasses, and your sister has to be married to an optician. But you know me, I never complain. Even when your sister's husband opened the kitchen door in my face, I kept a stiff upper lip. Your loving mother, Mother."
That's 12 pages?
P.S.
Oh, of course.
P.S. As I wrote you in my last letter, the doctor said the climate here is not good for me and I should be near the seashore. So I'm asking you if it's all right if I come to visit you over the holidays.
Wait a minute. She lives in California. Why does she have to come to New York for the shore?
Dear, California's 3,000 miles from the ocean.
Oh, yes, I never thought of that.
Where was I? Oh, yes. If it isn't all right for me to come, I'll know it's not your fault. And you can tell him from me. Oh, I'll skip this part.
No. I want to hear that. And you can tell him for me what?
You can tell him for me that I wouldn't ask to come if you hadn't written me that he said he needed me.
Who? When did I say that?
Last month. Don't you remember? When I said New York is so nice this time of year, I wish my mother was here, and you said that's all I need is your mother.
Look, Jane, here's what I want you to write. Tell her she could stay in California.
No, wait a minute. I haven't finished reading the letter. Where was I? Oh, yes. That he needed me. I wish you will let me know right away if I can come, because I am desperate to get away from here, because this is a matter of life and... I can't read this last word. Oh, she says in the next sentence, "Please excuse the shaky handwriting because we've just left Kansas City and the train is going real fast."
Oh, no, isn't that awful? The next morning at breakfast, a telegram came from Pittsburgh. "Arriving in New York this afternoon at 3 o'clock your time. Stop. If it's too much trouble, don't bother meeting me at the station, as I will probably not have one of my fainting spells right in the middle of the station, and if I should, some stranger will probably find me eventually, and besides, I only have just the 3 bags and a small steamer trunk. Stop. Collect. Mother. Stop. Love. Mother. Stop."
Well, I guess you're going to be too busy to meet her, so I will.
Yes, I'm too busy. Have you broken the news to our maid yet that your mother's coming?
Mrs. Bell? Oh, she'll love Mother. They have so much that's common.
Yes, I know. Everybody loves your mother. But you better break it to Mrs. Bell gently.
All right. Mrs. Bell!
Jane.
Can I see you a minute?
I'm busy, Jane. I'm listening to the radio.
Oh, when you're finished, will you come?
Okay, Jane.
Listening to the radio. Is that all she does out there in the kitchen?
Well, she has her favorite radio programs. When she first came to work here, I promised her she could listen to the radio.
Okay, Jane, what is it? I was just listening to the story of Laura Winthrop, which poses the problem. Can a mother-in-law find happiness having 3 children and visit each one 4 months a year? Or would she have a better chance of happiness if she has 4 children and visit each of them 3 times a year? How that mother-in-law loused up Laura's life. Oh, they'll do it every time. What is it, Jane? Yeah.
Well, Mrs. Bell, my mother-in-law. Mother-in-law.
Yeah, quiet, dear. What is it, Jane?
Well, we're expecting a visitor.
Oh, well, congratulations. Where's the cigar?
No, not that kind of visitor. It's my mother-in-law.
Mother-in-law, not for me.
Wait a minute, Mrs. Bell. It's not his mother-in-law. It's my mother.
Look, Jane, when I took this job here, you said there would be only 2 people. It's in my contract.
Contract? What kind of contract?
Well, I got it right here. I carry it around all the time. Here's clause 3. Party of the first part agrees that party of the second part will not have to wait on, serve, clean up after, cook for, make the beds of, and or empty ashtrays for more than 2 people at one time.
Who signed a thing like that? Not us.
I signed it.
You signed?
Well, I'm the one who empties the ashtray, so why shouldn't I empty it?
But I didn't sign it.
Why should you? What do you do around here?
I'm the one who dirties the ashtrays. Without me, you'd have no job.
Ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Well, I gotta go to work. See you later, Jane.
But dear, what are we gonna do about Mrs. Bell?
You girls work that out between you. Goodbye, Jane. Goodbye, Mrs. Bell.
Now, Mrs. Bell.
There's no use talking, Jane. I like to work for you as long as there's just 2 of you. But if you're going to bring in a third party of the third kind, I'm going to strike.
Wait a minute, Mrs. Bell. Where are you running to like a chicken with a tail off?
Jane, which is it? Me or your mother, one of us has got to go.
Well, after all, my mother is my own flesh and bone.
Okay, Jane. I'm on strike. I'm going downstairs and picket.
Picket?
I'll walk up and down in front of the apartment and tell everybody you're unfair. And you can finish ironing those shirts in there yourself while I picket.
All right, if you're gonna strike, do it now. Strike while the iron is hot.
While Jane was having a problem at home with her maid, I was having a problem with my secretary at the office, Miss Anderson. She is Jane's cousin, and I'm stuck with her. Around 2:30 that afternoon, Miss Anderson buzzed me on the inter-office phone. She had just returned from her lunch hour and a half. Yes?
Mr. A, this is Miss Anderson.
Miss Anderson, I think I've explained to you before that this is an inter-office phone, which connects your desk out there with mine in here. Nobody else uses this phone. There are no party lines, no extensions, no coaxial cables. I know it's you, and if I answer, you know it's me. You don't have to say, Mr. Ace, this is Miss Anderson speaking. Just say what you gotta say and hang up quickly.
Are you quite finished?
What do you want?
Mr. Ace, if I weren't Jane's cousin, whom is your wife as well?
Whom is?
I would really resent that you have misconstrued everything I say and do. And unless I am sadly misconstrued, you deliberately misconstrue everything I say and do.
There seems to be a lot of unnecessary misconstruing going on around here. What is this misconstrue business?
Learn a word a day by using it in every way. It's in the newspaper every morning. Today's word is misconstrue. And if I choose to better my vocabulary and you go are going to deliberately misconstrue that too?
Look, Miss Anderson.
Every time I buzz you on this inner office phone, we come to a complete misconstruction.
We do.
I always make a supreme effort to construe you. The least you can do is construe me.
Isn't that awful?
Answering an inner office phone should be in no way misconstruable. Your misconstructive attitude is breaking down our whole construction.
Construction? What are you building up to? What did you call me for?
Jane is on the phone.
I construe you. Put her on. What I go through here with that.
Hello.
Hello, Jane.
This is Jane.
I know who you are. You've been announced. I said, hello, Jane. Now, what is it?
Mrs. Bell is striking.
Oh, I wouldn't say striking. Attractive, maybe.
I mean, she's striking. She says I'm unfair.
Oh, Jane, I think you're the fairest in the land.
You do, dear? Oh, you do not.
Yes, I do.
You do? Oh, you do not.
Yes, I do.
You do? Oh, you do not.
Okay, I don't.
I knew it wouldn't last.
Jane, what is it? What's on your mind?
I told you, Mrs. Bell went on strike. She's picketing. She's walking to and fro in front of the apartment. She's got a big sign that says, Mrs. Ace is unfair. Don't you think that's terrible?
Yes, I do.
You do? No, you do not.
Don't start that again.
What shall I do about Mrs. Bell? I have to prepare dinner. She quit work, and I can't find the roasting pan. I looked high and dry. It's behind me where she put it.
Have you looked in the refrigerator?
Refrigerator? Oh, stop being silly. I'll have to go downstairs and ask Mrs. Bell. But dear, you'll have to go meet my mother at the station.
Me?
She gets in at 3 o'clock. Now you be there.
Okay, Jane. I've got a full calendar of appointments and everything. I have to drop everything and go meet your mother. This is certainly going to misconstrue up my whole day.
Do what?
Learn a word a day, use it every way. Goodbye, Jane. When I got to the station, I found the train would be 2 hours late. It seemed they had to back up at Altoona to pick up a car which had been uncoupled by a little old lady who had complained the train was going too fast. And while I was waiting for her, Jane was down in the street in front of our apartment trying to find out where the roasting pan was.
Mrs. Ace is unfair to maids. Mrs. Ace is unfair to maids.
Mrs. Bell, for the last time, will you tell me where the roasting pan is?
In the refrigerator. Mrs. Ace is unfair to maids.
Please, Mrs. Bell, people will hear you.
I want them to hear me. Mrs. Ace is unfair to maids.
Do you have to holler it like that? The sign you're carrying says the same thing.
I have to holler it for people who can't read. Mrs. Ace is unfair to me.
Well, you're unfair to me. You hid that roasting pan, and the least you can do is go in and find it so I can get dinner.
I can't go in now, Jane. I'm busy picketing. I have to carry this sign.
Hey, what's going on, Jane?
Oh, hello, Ken. Mrs. Bell, it's Ken Roberts, our announcer.
Hello, Mrs. Bell.
Hi, Ken.
What's the trouble here? What does that mean? You're unfair to maids.
It's in my contract. I only have to serve 2 people, and now she brings in a mother-in-law on me.
She's my mother, not mother-in-law. She's coming to visit me, and Mrs. Bell is on strike.
Oh, now, wait a minute. You shouldn't strike about a thing like that. How about a little mediation?
I never touch the stuff in the middle of the day.
No, Mrs. Bell. I mean, you can reach some agreement. Jane, can't you make some concession?
I can't make anything. I can't find the roasting pan.
You don't understand, Jane. I mean, you can bargain collectively.
like this. Mrs. Bell, suppose Mrs. Ace gave you something extra for the extra person. Would that be all right?
Something extra? Like what?
Well, let me see. You don't live with the Aces now, do you, Mrs. Bell?
No, I have a room. I pay rent.
Oh, I see. Well, if they gave you a room to live in with them, that would save you rent. Would that be okay, Mrs. Bell?
Oh, sure can.
Well, how about it, Jane?
What happened? I wasn't listening. I just noticed on this sign, she's got Mrs. Ace in smaller letters than maids. That's unfair.
Jane, Mrs. Bell says if you give her a room with you, she'll come back to work.
We only have one guest room. My mother was going to sleep in there.
Mrs. Ace is unfair.
Oh, wait a minute, wait. I didn't say no. Now, let me see. If you took that guest room, my mother could sleep with me, and then he could have the couch in the living room. It's a little small, but yes, I guess it would be all right. Okay, Mrs. Bell.
Okay, Jane. That's a deal. Shake on it.
What?
Shake hands on it.
Oh. How do you do, Mrs. Bell?
Well, I finally got them all home. The old lady and the 3 other bags. I mean, the 3 bags and the steamer trunk. We got home rather late. We had a little trouble in the taxi. She wanted to uncouple the meter because we were going too fast. Then she asked me if we got her telegram, and I said, no, I always go down to Penn Station and watch the trains come in. And all the way home, she kept saying what a lucky coincidence it was. And I kept telling myself she'll only be here till after the holidays. When we got home, Jane was so happy to see her.
Oh, Mother, I'm so happy to see you.
Happy. If it makes you happy to be happy, you be happy.
How was the train trip, Mother?
I got train sick. I should have taken a plane.
Well, why didn't you?
I get plane sick.
Well, why did you just
What
say...
did you just say?
I said, did you have nice accommodations on the train?
Oh, yes, very nice. My daughter, who I was staying with, and California's husband, got me a very nice compartment.
Oh, that's nice, Mother.
They must have told the conductor to take good care of me, because every time the train came to a station, he locked me in my compartment.
Uh-huh. How's everything in California?
Well, Ethel writes me they're very happy out there.
Happy. Everybody's happy.
Do you ever see any movie stars, Mother?
Movie stars? Greer Garrison lives 1 block from us. I wouldn't walk across the street to see her. Irene Dunn lives around the corner. I wouldn't walk across the street to see her. Clark Gable lives about 8 miles from us, Jane. Janie, I have to get some new arch supports.
Right, Mother. But how about Gregory Peck? Ever see him?
Yes, I see him.
You did? How about Jimmy Stewart?
Yes, I see him too.
How about Ava Gardner?
I see him too.
Ava Gardner happens to be a woman.
If it makes him happy to be a woman, let him be happy.
Mother, don't you want to lie down before dinner? Take a little snooze?
Oh, you don't have to bother about me, Janie. I won't be a bother. I've never been a bother. You can ask your sister. I never bothered her. She never bothered about me. What can you expect from children? So, if it's going to be any bother, don't bother, because I don't want to be a bother.
Is that the word for today?
Oh, Mother, you misconstrued me.
That's the word.
It won't be a bother. I won't have to bother. We have a maid that bothers, Mrs. Bell. I'll call her. Mrs. Bell!
What do you want, Jane?
Can you come in a minute and meet my mother?
Just a minute, Jane.
You've got a maid now, Janie?
Yes, Mrs. Bell.
Are maids expensive, I suppose?
Well,
They don't work for nothing.
no, oh no.
Did you pay her out of your allowance?
Yes, I pay her out of my allowance.
Then it must be a pretty big allowance, is it, Janie?
Yes, I think it's just fine.
Then if he gives you a big allowance, I suppose he's doing pretty well?
Oh, yes, pretty well.
Well, when you pay your maid, the money you have left What percentage is it of your allowance?
Percentage?
I mean, like, if you paid her $30 a week, for instance, do you have $30 a week left over?
Well, something like that.
Something like that. Then that would be 60. Well, what percentage would you say 60 is of her salary every week?
Percentage?
Well, let me put it this way. How much does...
$150 a week.
Before or after taxes?
Oh, isn't that awful?
Yeah, Jane, here I am.
Oh, come in, Mrs. Bell. This is my mother, Mrs. Sherwood. Mrs. Bell.
I'm pleased to meet you, Mrs. Bell.
Hello, Mom. I'm happy to meet you.
Happy. Everybody's happy. With your money, I'd be happy too.
Mrs. Bell, Mother has to have something special for dinner.
Special? Like what?
I don't want to be any bother. If it's going to be a bother, don't bother. Just a boiled egg, that's all.
A boiled egg? That's what you want for dinner?
That's all, on top of the spinach.
Spinach? What spinach?
The spinach that goes with the boiled tongue.
Boiled tongue? We don't have any boiled tongue.
We're having a roast for dinner, Mother.
Well, I'll take roast. I don't want to be a bother. There are only a few things I'm allowed to eat. Tongue, roast chicken, hamburger, steak, veal chops, duck, and once in a while a little corned beef and cabbage.
What can't you eat?
Peanut brittle. But if it makes you happy to have peanut brittle, be happy. I don't want to be a bother.
Come on, Mother. I'll show you to your room and you can lie down a while.
All right, Janie. Maybe I better rest a while.
We'll have dinner late, Mother, so you can rest. We'll eat any time you want to.
Oh, it doesn't matter to me, Janie. I'm never hungry. What time is it now?
5:15.
All right. So wake me at 5:30. But if it's going to be a bother, don't bother. I don't want to be bothered.
You see, Mrs. Bell, she doesn't want to be a bother. And it's only till after the holidays.
Oh, don't worry about me. I'll be able to handle a laughing girl.
I'm happy to hear you say that, Mrs. Bell.
If it makes you happy to be happy...
Oh, no, not you, too. Well, I want to tell you something. Did my heart good to see that sweet little old lady pack away that dinner. Because if she packs it away like that 3 times a day, she'll never last till after the holidays. I still didn't know about this arrangement Jane had made for Mrs. Bell to live with us. I should have suspected something when we were sitting around the living room after dinner, and Mrs. Bell had finished the dishes, and she walked in, sat next to me on the love seat, put her feet on the coffee table, took out a cigarette, and turned to me and said,
How about a match, dear?
What?
A match?
Oh, yes, here.
Oh, I didn't tell you, did I, dear?
Tell me what?
Mrs. Bell is going to live with us while Mother's here.
Gonna live with us?
She was on strike and Ken Roberts made up the meditation.
Meditation?
Yes, you know, when 2 people disagree, they have to meditate. So Mrs. Bell is going to live with us.
Just a minute. Let me meditate on that.
$30 a week, and she lives here besides?
But Jane, we only have 1 guest room.
A very good question, dear. And the answer is the living room couch.
What about the living room couch?
Well, somebody has to sleep on the couch.
I think I'll go to my room and lie down.
Room?
Just a minute, Mom. We're still meditating.
We certainly are. Who sleeps on the couch? That's what I want to know.
Now, just a minute, dear. Don't jump at convulsions. We'll figure it out. We'll put our heads together.
That's fine. That puts you and me in our bedroom.
Yes. Now, Mother takes the guest room and Mrs. Bell sleeps on the couch.
Not me, Jane.
With the money you make, you can get a penthouse at the Waldorf.
Well, now, wait a minute. We'll figure out another way. Dear, you and Mrs. Bell will... No, that won't do. Dear, if you and Mother... No, that won't do. Well, now, Mother and Mrs. Bell.
Oh,
the couch, and I go without saying, so that leaves...
No.
But dear, it's only till after the holidays.
Yes, dear, only till after the holidays.
Only till after the holidays. Isn't this awful? Well, all right. I don't want to be a bother. If I'm going to be a bother, don't bother bothering. I'll sleep on the couch.
You see, dear, it was so simple.
Yes, I am. Mother, you're going back after the holidays, aren't you, Mother?
Yes, I got my return ticket already.
You wouldn't mind showing it to me.
If it'll make you happy to see it, be happy. There's the ticket. You can see the return date is punched on it.
Where?
Right there. July 5th.
July 5th. Jane, you said only till after the holidays.
Yes, Christmas, New Year's, Valentine's Day, Washington's birthday, Lincoln's birthday, April Fool's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Decoration Day.
Yes, till doomsday. Isn't that awful?
Easy Aces is brought to you by the makers of Anacin, the remarkable tablets that give effective and fast relief from pains due to headache, neuralgia, or neuritis. Join us again Saturday night when the makers of Anacin bring you another visit with Jane and Goodman Ace, the Easy Aces. Heard in tonight's cast were Michaela Nelson as Miss Anderson, Pat Vern Harris as Jane's mother, Bridget Duffy as Mrs. Bell, Roger Badish as Goodman Ace, Kathleen Alton as Jane Ace, and I'm your announcer, George Drelius. Our producer was Parker Grunwald, and our director was Mercida DeMonk. See you on August 10th for our next show. From Arch Obler Plays, Rocket from Manhattan, Escape, Meet John Red, a Western. This is NBC, the National Broadcasting Company.